west I should probably remove. I've got a soil layer, a clue layer, and my elevation layer. So here we can see the watershed a little better. Here's our main watershed, and we'll pluck off these basins as well. All right, step one, we're going to launch our Arc toolbox. And here she is. What we're going to do is we're going to add NRCS's engineering toolbox, what I sent to you in a zip file. So I'm going to click Add Toolbox, select NRCS. If you'll have to navigate to where you have yours, I've got mine tucked in this folder here. So here's my NRCS's engineering toolbox 10.0. Going to open, and it'll add it here into my toolbox. This toolbox is saved to your map file, to your MXD. So if I hit save now, anytime that I open this MXD, this toolbox will come into my Arc toolbox. If I start from a new MXD, this toolbox will not appear. So it's not saved to your profile, but to a map file. All right, let's start running tools. I'm going to expand the toolbox, expand the watershed tools, expand the watershed delineation tools, and here I have my scripts to run. We're going to start with script 1, define area of interest. I'll double click to launch. And my first step is going to be to browse to and select a workspace. I'll hit the yellow folder to browse. One very important thing to know, this software, it will only run, these scripts will only run if you're saving to a file path that has just text and no special characters. So there can't be any spaces in your entire file path. There can't be any periods. I think underscores will work, hyphens will not. So I have created a folder, watersheds, on my C drive. That's my depository of all of the output that's written by this tool. I'm going to create a new folder. We'll call this a very wise project. I'm going to select the folder, see the folder name down here, and I'll add. All right, she populated in. Another pro tip when using these tools, if you only have an option, a yellow folder to browse, that's what you'll use to navigate to what you need to do. If you have a drop-down available, always select the drop-down. So because I have a drop-down, I'm going to choose it. My input DEM is my DEM. To define my area of interest, I can actually go onto the map and draw a polygon to outline the area that I want the tool to consider. So I need to draw a box that's at least as expansive as my watershed of interest. To help me figure that out, I'm going to turn my DEM on. So I've got some high ground over here. I wanted to make a box, but I'm going to have to go around. We're coming down across the road. Sorry for the sound effects. All right, here's my polygon. I clicked once to start drawing and once on each vertex, or each vertex, and I'm going to double click to end my polygon. So this is my area of interest I've just drawn. My last, or is that my last option that I'm going to populate here is selecting an interval for my contours. We've got a little bit of topography. I'm going to do a 2-foot contour interval. The last drop-down allows us to select units of measure for our DEM. Because OSIP's data is feet on the X and Y plane and feet in the vertical, we can leave this blank. Everything is the same unit, so we don't need to populate that. I'm going to click OK to get it to run. So what this define area of interest tool is going to spit out for us is, first of all, it's going to draw our contours that I just specified. If you didn't specify contours, you obviously wouldn't get that layer. It'll also create a layer for our area of interest. It's just a polygon box that I drew. It'll also, ooh, hey, here we have them all. So as I mentioned, here's our contour layer. I'm going to turn them off to turn off some clutter. We've got our area of interest, that red box. I don't really need it, so I'm going to turn it off as well. And these are the interesting parts. So we have our depth grid is next here. I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on so you can get an idea of what we're looking at. It shows anywhere. Oh, that's, hey. Sorry, I saw the comments. I'll stay focused. So the depth grid shows us anywhere that water is ponding or will pond if we don't have, for example, culverts under the road. So it's a really great tool to help us identify those culverts if you don't have a culverts layer like I do. So that's our depth grid. Our hill shade just uses shading. You can specify your azimuth and time of day to get whatever type of shading you want if you run this tool, but we just have a default in here. It'll give us shading to give a better 3D representation of our watershed. And then last we have our DEM, but done in a fancy tie-dye that shows our lows in a light blue and our high areas in like a whitish periwinkle. Okay, I'm going to turn some of these back on because they're pretty and they're actually useful too. And we're going to go to step 2 over in our toolbox. Let's run the Create Stream Network script. Our first step, we're going to select our project AOI feature. So we're just going to hit the drop down, click our AOI, and she's added. This is one of the really amazing parts of this tool, the Digitize Culverts option. I obviously picked Watershed where culverts make a huge difference in our watershed area. What I can do, I can just go onto my screen and start drawing in where my culverts are. Oh, did I not? Oof, I might have done a bad thing in my example. We are going to be real close to our watershed boundary. I might have to do another AOI. Oh well, it's a good learning example. If I did it wrong, we're just going to roll with this. Okay, here we go. Digitizing culverts. I click once to start. I click twice to end. The biggest mistake I've made is not drawing them long enough, so now I tend to draw them a little too long. I'll digitize every culvert in my watershed and those adjacent to my watershed just to make sure she's not routing flow through the side ditch into my watershed that shouldn't be in there. So right now I'm digitizing outside of my watershed. Both of these are out, but I tend to be overly cautious. All right, all my culverts are in, and yeah, they're probably not the best. They should probably be perpendicular to the road. Just showing you what not to do. It won't make a difference in our watershed results, I promise, so please don't judge too harshly. The last option here is to enter our stream threshold in acres. Our stream threshold is the minimum contributing area required to form a stream. So if you make that number smaller, you'll see a greater density in the stream network. It's really great if you have very small watersheds that you're working in, only like an acre or a couple of acres. You can shrink this down to a quarter acre or whatever you need to. We've got a large enough watershed that I'm going to leave it at 1, and I think it's going to do a fine job. So I clicked OK, and here the tool's going to run. We're going to get 2 layers this time. She's going to write the culverts layer, the one that we went in and drew, and she's also going to make a stream network layer. So it'll be a polyline showing anywhere that concentrated flow paths are. Oh, you'll also notice that we're getting a bunch of datum conflicts. I have my projection in State Plain North, our OSIP data is coming to us in Harn projection, so we've got a slight difference. It does not affect the functionality of any of our tools, so it's a warning that I choose to ignore. Okay, as promised, we got 2 new layers. We've got a lot going on our screen, so I'm gonna start turning a few of these off so we can see what's happening a little better. Okay, like I noticed before, up here I'd like to see more stream networks going away from our watershed. We might end up clipping a little bit of our watershed in here, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, we have our stream network. This is the outlet I'm interested in. We're gonna redo this waterway. We've got a lot of flow going in. It looks good. At this point, if I were doing this not as a practice, I'd go back and make my area of interest larger just to make sure I'm not clipping things up here or down here. Yeah. Okay. We're ready for step 3, create watershed network, or create our watershed. We already did the network. So I double-click to launch. Our area of interest stream network is WISE streams. To digitize, so next we'll digitize our outlets. To digitize our outlets in this tool, we get to draw a line much like, sorry, I'm going to pause and read the comments. 842, yeah, I missed that 4 minutes ago. Do I want to make sure that my AOI is a lot larger than the watershed? It looks like you might have clipped a bit. Absolutely, and I think I just covered that, but thanks for asking that question. I didn't do that very well. Okay, to digitize our outlet, I'm going to draw a dam at the watershed outlet. I need to at least, at a minimum, cross my streamline, but I also don't want to extend my line too far because the entire area contributing to the line will be delineated. So if there's, I don't know, a small flow path that's going through here but not really dumping into my waterway, it's going to be caught if I make my dam quite large. So this tool lets us also delineate more than one watershed at a time. I can do a couple watersheds next to each other if I had wanted to. I can also do nested watersheds, so sub-basins, and we'll do a couple of those. So when I'm drawing these, similar to the other tools, we click once to begin and we double click to end the line. If you accidentally draw a basin in or an outlet that you don't want, you're just going to go to your editor toolbar, use the edit tool to select the outlet you don't want. We're going to delete it and it'll go away. If then I want to start drawing outlets again, I've lost that draw tool, so I come back in here and I click Digitize Outlets, and now I've got my draw tool. We're going to do, check this out, we'll do yet another sub-basin nested. So now we're up to 4 outlets. I think that's plenty. I've got to select and type in a watershed name. You can choose anything relevant. Sometimes I'll use West or a track number. I'm going to choose my first name because I love my name and I'm really lame. All right, there we go. We have our watershed name in. The last option here is to create flow paths. What this will do if we check the box is it'll calculate our watershed length for each of our subbasins, and it'll also create a layer that shows that flow path. I'm looking at a waterway, so I think that would be great information to have, so I'm going to check the box and click OK to get her to run. Any questions at this point? Nothing? All right, well then what we're going to get from this layer, or from this tool, we're going to get our watershed boundary is going to come out. We're going to get our flow paths. Our watershed boundary is going to have our acreage, so our watershed size, our average slope will also be calculated for our subbasin. So we're getting most of our pieces we need for our waterway design: area, slope. We're going to get flow length from this tool, and the other piece we're going to get later on in our webinar is this runoff curve number tool is going to give us a curve number. All right. Let's zoom out to get a better idea what we're looking at. I'm also going to turn off streams to reduce some clutter. Yeah, look at this. I truncated it. That's sad. But a good learning experience. One of the things we'll see here, it's hard to see if this basin area includes the subbasins that are nested. A good way to check to see what's all included is to use your Select Features tool. So if I select my, turn off my AOI. If I select my large basin, I can see that the nested watersheds actually aren't included in this overall acreage and slope. One of the things that I'd recommend if you're going to do a large watershed and then do individual reaches or laterals, I would run the Create Watershed tools once for the entire watershed. Just do that main subbasin and then come back and run it a second time, assigning a separate name to the watershed, like subbasins, and do each of those branches separately.
Janelle?
Yeah.
I had a question. Chuck has a question for you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna. He just got done typing it in here, so I'll read it, and if it's you have more than that, Chuck, I can try and unmute you too. But his question is, I have an error with calculating the flow paths. It mentions the parameters are not valid and the tool is not licensed.
Oh. Chuck, I have not seen that error. That's a... I'm obviously speechless, Chuck. That is a very good question. Streams. So you have to have your spatial analyst extension checked out to
That's
get
what I'm
it.
thinking.
But to do the stream network, he needs that extension, so he wouldn't have made it that far without it. Chuck, we're gonna have to look at that maybe outside the webinar and try to troubleshoot that, because off the top of my head, I don't know how to resolve it. Sorry, but I'll call you after this. Does that work?
That's good. Keep any questions coming, because that's one of the things we wanted to do, is filter out some of the things before we put this out. The tool is certainly, we didn't works, and it's not, but we want to make sure that we've got a good understanding of what we need to do to get people going on it and come up with any of these questions and get answers to them before we kind of make it a little bit more public. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. It's also really good to find out what all the bugs are, because I mean, not having ArcMap 10.3, a lot of folks were working on 10.0 or 10.1, and the tool wouldn't run on that either. They couldn't even view the toolbox in that version. So slowly yet surely we're finding more things that aren't working. Over in Mercer County, Matt Heckler has a DEM from OSIP that only half of it is valid, the other half you can't do any geoprocessing on. So I guess that's part of the purpose of having this small group, is to figure out where the errors are happening and how to fix them. So thanks for having problems, Chuck. I'll try to help you fix them. All right, back on course, looking at what is on my screen. The select tool is one way to look at each of these basins. I also want to open up the attribute table and take a look at them that way, because then I can select each sub-basin here as well. Yeah, that one's teeny tiny. Okay, so again, my suggestion, if you're going to do a design for like an outlet structure, pretend this is a creek and not a road, if you want to do some kind of drop box here or whatever, it would be good to have the overall watershed characteristics, and then for each lateral to have those sub-basin characteristics. Any questions on our basins to this point? If we want to pause, I'm pausing. If we want to look at our flow path lengths, you can use the identify tool. Oh, I need to be better at clicking. Flow path. And you can get your length that way. We can label our flow paths. If you, yeah, it's a natural water course. Let's go to properties, the labels tab. Instead of it showing type, I want to show my length in feet. There we go. That's a lot of decimal points, so let's make that not ugly. I'm going to open the attribute table. I'm going to right-click on length feet. We're going to go to properties. I'm going to hit the numeric ellipsis. Instead of having 6 decimal points, I'd rather see none. All right. Gonna pan. And now I have a unit list number. I'm sorry, I can't go forth with that. This is a lot of detail that maybe I shouldn't do in the real webinar. But since you're a select group of advanced users, you get to see all of the fun stuff. There we go, flow paths with units. All right, we are at a good point here. Let's move on to the runoff curve number calculation tool. So we're going to start with script 1, prepare soils and land use. My watershed layer is Janelle, and my input soils layer is soils. Your soils layer needs to have a hydrologic soil group field. Right now I have all of the counties available on a Google Drive folder. The plan is to get, hopefully by December 1 when we go statewide with this, is to have both NRCS hosted hopefully on your F drive and hopefully an FTP site for ODA for the folks that aren't on CC machines. So right now we've got our soils layer, the HYDE group, DC hydrologic group dominant condition is the layer that has our hydrologic soil group in. So that field is selected. Our last option is we can use a clue layer and specify it. If we specify a clue layer, it will be used to divide the land use layer into polygons, which can be beneficial. My watershed is pretty homogeneous, so I don't want it split into each field. I'm going to just use the split polygons feature to separate my watershed into land use groups. So I'm going to leave this blank. If time allows, we can run it with both, and you can get an idea of what that looks like. So this tool just splits our watershed up into different soils groups and into a land use layer. Once we go through and attribute those layers, we'll run step 2 and it'll run, or it'll calculate the curve numbers. And that's what she's screaming at me in caps, that we need to attribute these two layers. Okay, I'm going to turn off anything that I don't need at this point. So I'm going to turn off everything except for soils and land use. I'm going to open up the soils attribute table. And I'm going to start an editing session for that soils layer, Janelle soils. Okay. I'm only interested in attributing the soils that have a dual classification. Our curve number table only gives, I don't know if you remember that matrix, there's classifications for A, B, C, and D. There's no dual classifications in that curve number chart. So we have to let her know which one we want. I just double-clicked on Hydro Group to sort my attribute table. And I have 3 different soil groups, polygons that need classified. My watershed doesn't have any systematic draining in, so I'm going to choose D for all of these classes. Okay, that is all I needed to do. I'll scroll down and make sure there's nothing else. We're good. Everything's classified as a single class. We're going to save our edits, stop editing, and move on to land use. So if I pan, she'll update and we'll see. Yay, she's all solid colored. We're good. Turn off soils, and now we're ready to do, okay, we're ready to do land use. So I'm going to right click, open attribute table, and I'm going to start the editing session for Janelle land use. Okay. Well, what I get to do now is select my watershed polygon and then go to my cut polygons tool in the editor toolbar and start slicing. I'll start down here and I'll start carving out my roads. So I'm going to start by single clicking. Make sure you extend past the boundaries of your polygon that you wish to clip. Click once to start, double click to finish. I'm going to trim out the roadway on both sides. So now I have a separate polygon for that roadway. I've got a homestead here that I want to clip out. So I'm going to trace around her. Oh, she's angry. Hey, here's a good example. So I need to be cutting within a polygon that's highlighted, that's editable. This polygon is highlighted, this one is not. So I needed to select down here before I started chopping. So let's try that again. All right, we've got another farmstead here we're going to chop out. We've got a wood, so I'm going to select this upper piece, get her highlighted, and then start hacking away. All right, our woods is separate. I have another road over here to trim out of my watershed. There's my road. I've got some wooded lots over here with houses on that I want to separate from the woods. I've got a field back here. Got another field up here. Okay. Do I have each land use delineated? I think I do. Okay. Now I'm going to unselect all, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to use the select tool and start clicking on the map. I'm going to start with the roads. Oop, I only wanted the road. I have to zoom in. I'm going to find the 2 roads, select them. I'm going to hold down the shift key on the keyboard so I can select, oh shoot, I need to zoom in more. All right, select just the road. Zoom out, hit the shift key, zoom in, select the next road. I'm going to go down to the attribute table and show just selected records. And I'm going to make my land use field much wider. And I'm going to find paved road, open ditches, including right-of-way. And I'm going to specify that for both of my roads. Paved roads. And I think they're fair or good. I'm going to go with good. Next up, I want to look at these farmsteads. So I'm clicking on the map and holding the Shift key on the keyboard. That's all the farmsteads. Those are not farmsteads. So farmstead. Both my farmsteads have more pervious area than impervious, so I think they're both good. Next up, I'm going to do my woods without homes in them. I'm going to do woods, not grazed, adequate litter and brush for both. In good condition. This, I'm kind of torn on how to classify. I think we'll do a woods grass combination and make it poor because we have roofs. If someone has a better suggestion on how to classify those, I'm all ears. All right, the last thing we have left. Oh.
Do the
yeah.
I haven't looked at that, but I assume that the land use and the conditions follow the EFH Chapter 2 guidelines. And
yeah.
in
What do you mean, Justin?
Well, the conditions apply to some of them, but some of those categories don't have conditions associated with them.
Yeah.
Like the farmsteads, it's just a number, I believe, just a curve number. But woods has them, and obviously that there's a more detail on the crop fields. Is that do you know if are the numbers behind the land uses the same as the EFH2?
They are. So and we'll see it once we go to run script 2. If there isn't a good, fair, poor condition associated with that land use, it'll strip it out and just use that default number, that single number, that single condition number. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It has to allow us to specify a condition just to keep things easy on the how to present the data. It's going to present every option, but it'll strip out extraneous data when it starts running. So I should look at that table before I do this webinar again. Is that a good suggestion, Justin?
Yeah, overall I think that it's important that everybody understands the implications of the different land uses and some of the background material before using the tool, and make sure that they understand how the curve numbers are associated based on the land uses and the conditions.
Agreed. Okay. I'll try to come up with a more meaningful discussion for the next go-round on selecting curve numbers. Does that sound like a good idea, everyone?
Everyone says yes.
Okay. Webinars are so hard. I'm presenting in a vacuum. All right. I'm gonna keep moving forward to my promise to keep this under an hour. What I've gone through on the screen here, I've selected each of the crop fields, and I'll classify those all the same way. Row crop, straight row with crop residue. Wait, I got them all. And classify those as good. Okay, we have liftoff. So I'm going to go back to show all records, not just this. Oh, we don't have liftoff. Who did I miss? Well, that is a very, very large polygon there. To be consistent, we're going to call that, what was it? It was woods grass combination poor. Next time when I draw that, it's probably still road right away. Okay. Unselect all. It looks like I have every polygon classified, and I'm ready to save my edits, stop editing, and run script 2. Calculate runoff curve number. I only need to specify my watershed name. It's Janelle, and I'll ask her to run. Had I failed to classify that tiny little piece over here at this point, I would get some red text telling me that I failed to classify all of my polygons. In regards to what Justin said, I think all of the land uses we had did require a good, fair, poor classification, because generally I'll see in here, right in this area, that a good or fair condition does not exist. Therefore, that land use was reclassified as fair, or whatever the only option is in our curve number lookup table. Okay, it also prints out our curve numbers here, and it adds them, you don't have to write them down from this box, but it adds them to our watershed attribute table. So here we have them in our attribute table. I'm going to turn off these layers, our land use layer, our runoff curve number layer. So this just intersects, this layer here is an intersection of soils, land use, and subbasins. That's where all these polygons come from. No, runoff curve number, yes, sorry. I'm going to turn it off because I never used that layer. I'd much rather see my curve numbers added to these labels. And the way we're going to do that, we'll do that since we have plenty of time, we're going to go to Properties. We're going to go to the Labels tab, edit the expression. I'm going to copy the VB new line. It's a carriage return. I want the runoff curve number label on a new line. I'm going to tell it to add RCN : space in my quotation marks. And then I'm going to hit another and sign and add RCN. If I didn't want to have to make this change each time, I can actually save this label, and you can specify any logical place to save it. I have I'm going to put it in labels folder, drop it in, call it watershed with RCN. Save. So next time if I just wanted to load that label, I can click load and navigate to where it's saved and add it back. I'll make sure that I didn't goof anything. nope, I like that label. We're going to click OK and add it. And if we add flow paths, then we have everything I need to document my watershed characteristics on one map. I did say carriage return. Okay, that is all I have. If there's anything else that you guys think should be included in the webinar, basically, if you have any suggestions, I'm all ears. This is what I wanted to show you today. Oh, how do I print the file? Justin, I thought you were going to show how we print maps in your basics webinar. So NRCS, Scott, if you would like to jump in, or maybe this is a discussion for the engineers meeting, of what kind of documentation you want to see in a design folder, that's where I think it would be valuable for me to hear so I know what to teach in the next webinar.
Yeah, we'll cover, Janelle will cover obviously some of those basics on printing and map making in those other two basic webinars. I just was making, I guess, the question and the point of, now that we're done, that's the objective is then to print this map, right, and put it into our file with our EFH2 calculations.
I think so, yeah. But I don't do QAR, so
and maybe that's another point for further discussion down the road when we get some more instruction on file documentation management, etc. But I guess our point here today is a little bit more instruction on actually using the tool. One question came up, and is, I guess, can you export that to CAD?
Absolutely. That is a very good question. Thank you. I'm going to go back into, I like looking at things in map view. We can export data. So, sorry. In our table of contents, you'll right-click on your watershed layer, click on Data, Export to CAD, and I can export my watershed boundary. I can also add in flow paths or any other feature that you would like if you want the soils layer, I don't know. You could add any other layer you want to export. You can bundle it into this drawing file that would be exported. Depending on what CAD you're running, you can specify your file. I'm running Civil 3D 2016 and this file type. It's been very successful for me. I don't like that file path. I'm just going to tuck it onto my desktop. So no, I want to go to my H drive to find my desktop. And we'll call it example. Save. The ignore paths and tables. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what I generally choose there. So I'm gonna, here's another pro tip. Always use the tool help menu. All of these scripts have help information as well. If you forget what you're supposed to specify, check out the help. And so that's what I'm going to do here. Allows the function to ignore the paths in the drawing path name. Check ignores the paths. Oh, I don't want it to write to a separate file. I'm gonna keep it checked. Seed file is something very nice to have. If you have a waterway drawing template that you always start from that has your map projection and each of your default layouts, like your Dropbox structures or whatever, you can specify that drawing file is your seed file. I'm not going to save you the bother of navigating to one right now, but you'll want to specify a seed file. Otherwise, these files are just going to end up in a new blank map. It won't have a projection or even any of your default line settings. It'll be blank and void of all the things you're used to having. So specify the seed file, please. All right. I'm not going to do my own advice, but here we go. She's going to export my outline and my flow path to that DWG. And she also adds them in, which I find obnoxious, so I remove them right away. Okay. At this point, you could open CAD, that drawing we just created, and take a look at it. We're not going to go that deep into it. Another thing, someone in this office just suggested that I do for the land use or the soils layers, whenever we're editing those, instead of going through each row individually, we can use the field calc to write values for many of those polygons at one time. So I'm going to do an example. I want to turn my soils layer on that, and bear with me because the example's kind of flown the coop here. We're going to just choose anything. Imagine these were all CD classifications, but I want to make them all D. I'm going to go select them, and I can select them either down here in my attribute table by clicking here along the leftmost piece of the attribute table and holding the Shift key and selecting multiples. Then I'm going to show only my selected records. I'm going to right-click on Hydro Group, go to Field Calculator, and I'm going to tell her that I want her to specify D for all of those soil classes. So we're pretending again, for the sake of the exercise, that all these were dual soil classes that aren't systematically drained, so I want them all to be Ds. And by doing that, she'll overwrite all of those at one time. And we can do the same thing for the land use. If you want everything to be good, but don't want to have to hit the drop downs and say good on everything, you can just right-click, go to Field Calculator, and you would type in good. Make sure you put it in quotation marks. Whenever you're using Field Calculator, if it is a text value, it needs to be in quotation marks. If it is a numerical value, you don't need quotes, but we only have text in my example, so we need quotes. Boom. And just so that you know that this works, we're going to make everything C just so you can see that it will update to something different. Bam. Okay. Any other things that we should do?
Janelle, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I get towards the end like you are now, and I realize, and I think I know the answer, but I realize that, uh-oh, I made a mistake somewhere, do I have to like start from scratch? How far back can you go to make edits in previous steps like you just did there to maybe your watershed or culverts or flow path or any of that stuff?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. And the obvious mistake that I made with my area of interest, truncating my watershed down here, I have to go all the way back up to the beginning and redefine my area of interest. I have to start all the way back over. If your mistake occurred with specifying, if you didn't do a culvert, that actually affects your watershed. So here we go. You can see help menu. But if I failed to digitize, where are my culverts? Here we go. What if I failed to do this culvert, or even this one, and it ran the water through the ditch over into my watershed? I'd have to start back over here at this step to update my stream network to get that right. If my mistake occurred with my watershed outlet, if I drew my dam too wide and I started picking up water that won't contribute above the outlet that I'm looking at, then I'll have to go back only to step 3 and redo my outlets. So it really depends on at what point you made the mistake. You've got to, but for my mistake, this here, I'm going all the way back to step 1. Well, should we call it good enough? Are there any other comments? I would love for you to give me comments now, or send me an email, or give me a phone call, and provide some suggestions so that this could be even better next time. And thanks, Justin, and whoever else who has helped me so far on how to make this better.
Okay, yes, anything, like I mentioned there, if you have any thoughts or comments, questions, or if you run through the program yourself in the coming days and get stuck on anything, please definitely let Janelle or I know, preferably Janelle, because she'll be able to answer your questions.
And I like debugging. It's fun. Like that sense of accomplishment when we finally get it to run. That's very nice. It's really frustrating, but really fun.
I think it's a pretty cool tool. It will take a little bit of basic GIS background for some people, and we will probably have to get a little bit used to some of the possible errors that it could represent and make sure we work through those. But I think with time, it'll save hopefully a lot of time on some of our watershed and hydrology work. Hopefully you guys found it interesting and helpful, and can go back and at least start to begin to use it on some projects and start to gain some experience. And our hope is that we'll slowly build up a little bit of user base so that other technicians around the different districts or around the state can have some more resources for troubleshooting, problem solving, and training. Maybe someday we'll incorporate this fully into the basic TDP classes when we go through watershed and hydrology calcs. Okay, so we're coming up on 9:30. Thanks again for attending, everyone, and feel free to give us any more comments, but we'll close the webinar here in just a couple minutes. And thanks again for everyone's attention. Enjoy your rainy Friday, and have a good weekend.
Wait, Justin, one more thing.
Yes.
But I just realized I never showed you the workflow sheet that is included in that zip file where the tools are contained. So the tools are in a folder right here in your toolbox, and adjacent to your toolbox is a PDF, the Engineering Tools Workflow. It is a breakdown of all of the tools in the toolbox. I think page 4? Page 4 is where the watershed delineation tools begin. So if you prefer a paper option to a video option, here is how you go through the tools on paper. So there's another resource for you. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. All right, I'm done.
Okay, well, you're welcome to attend the statewide version we'll do, which is scheduled for, what did we say, the 1st of December. Again, if you'd like, and we'll make a recording and make that recording public if you have any need to go back and reference any of that after that December 1st webinar. Okay, thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Janelle, for working through that with us, and we'll shut her down here, and have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.